This is an interview on the 30th of July 2006 with Jack James Duffy, V280195, Private, 39th Battalion, Headquarter Company, 1 Platoon. Well, first of all, Jack, how did you come to join the Army?
I was called up.
And what unit did you go into?
At the beginning, the 2nd Field Ambulance at Mount Martha.
And when was that?
5th of November 1941.
And what sort of training did you do in the field ambulance?
I was a driver, and that's all the training I did.
How old would you have been at the time you were called up?
18.
Was that a militia unit or was it?
No, it was militia.
So how long were you in the field ambulance before you transferred across to the 39th, or did you volunteer for the 39th?
No, I volunteered to join the 39th about 3 weeks after being in the Army.
And why did you volunteer to join the 39th?
It was something different, to go away overseas, and you might be able to save some money.
And what were you told it was going to be like?
Oh, a dream island. Live in barracks, open the window and you pick bananas off the tree, fishing and hunting trips every weekend. All lies.
Did you have any friends with you in the field ambulance that transferred across to the 39th?
Oh yes, yes.
Do you remember any of their names?
Yeah, Sid Pike. I used to go to school with him, as a matter of fact.
So it would have been about November that you transferred across to the 39th?
November.
And where did you go?
To Darley.
And what was the camp like there?
That was barracks.
And what was it like? Was it a big camp?
Oh yes, quite a big camp, yes.
And do you remember doing any training?
More driving.
Do you remember who your sergeant was then, or?
Yes, that was Sergeant Shaw.
And what was he like?
Oh, he was all right. He was a soldier from the First World War. Most of the senior officers of in the 39th were from the First World War.
So you would have heard about this time that you would be heading overseas. Were you told where you were going?
Oh yes. That was before I volunteered for this. I thought it'd be a nice holiday.
And so, do you remember having Christmas dinner at Darley?
Yeah, oh yes, yes, yes. We were allowed to invite our parents for Christmas dinner. Yes.
And did your parents go?
Yes. And
the next day you headed off on the troop train up to Sydney. Do you remember that at all?
Yeah, oh yes. We're all down at the Bacchus Marsh station. And we went by train, of course. We stopped at Seymour and had lunch. Sausages and mashed potatoes.
And how were you feeling about heading off overseas?
Oh, that was ideal. Something you could never afford to have in peacetime. Hey?
Do you remember what it was like when you got to Sydney Harbour?
Well, the train pulled up alongside the Aquitania, and we just boarded straight off the train and on up the gangplank.
Do you remember your first time you saw the ship?
Oh yes, it was a big ship. Yeah.
And when you got onto the ship, were you allocated a sleeping cabin, or did you sleep down in the...
No, I was on D-Deck, I think it was a 2-berth cabin.
You had a cabin?
Yes.
Do you remember who you shared it with?
Yes, Sid Pike.
Now, is there anything you remember about the voyage?
Oh, not a great deal. Because every day we had every platoon had their duty to do. But we had a lot of free time though, all the same.
What were your duties?
I guarded perhaps about 5 tonne of potatoes. I don't know what.
So it would have been a pretty, lackluster voyage.
Yes.
As you got closer to New Guinea, what were your feelings? What were you expecting when you got to New Guinea?
Oh, I don't really know, but it was late at night, and we could see all these headlights of the cars. And where we come from in Darley, there was a strict blackout, and here they are driving round. They didn't have a blackout till 10 o'clock.
Did you remember unloading and getting off the boat?
Oh yes, there was come off in tenders there.
And after you disembarked, what happened?
Well, the battalion marched out to the 7 Mile airfield. I was very fortunate that it was our platoon's duty day, and the battalion all left their kit bags on the wharf because someone had to guard them, and we were there all night guarding them.
So you were actually at the wharf?
Yes.
You didn't march out to the...
No. The next morning they brought us our breakfast was biscuits and bully beef, and I had never seen bully beef before, but I sure did see it later on. But I never went out to the 7 Mile airfield for about 3 weeks.
So where were you camped?
In Moresby.
Right.
Because I was a driver.
In Murray Barracks or at the wharf?
No, right in Moresby itself. In one of the houses.
Oh, in a house?
Yeah.
So were you billeted out into a house?
I just camped there.
Were there a few of you? Or?
Oh yes, all the drivers there, because we worked 24 hours. As soon as the truck pulled in, new driver got in.
24 hours?
Yeah. It was...
Without a break?
Oh no, we had breaks, but I suppose we did 8 hours, I suppose, and as soon as we pulled in again, the new driver would get in, we'd get out.
Do you remember who was in charge of you?
No, that would be Shaw, I think, yeah, Sergeant Shaw. Yeah.
And later on, where were you moved to?
Oh, we went out to the airfield there.
And what was your job there?
I was transferred, I was on loan to the SIG, it's a dispatch rider.
Right.
Yeah.
So you had a motorcycle?
Yeah.
What sort of motorcycle?
BSA.
And what was your job?
Just delivering dispatches.
From the 7 Mile into Port Moresby or?
Yes, all over, right down to Bootless.
Right out to Bootless. So would it be a written message?
Oh yes, yeah, yes.
And was your time more or less your own, besides delivering the messages?
Oh no, I was on a time slot. Like the army, you had to sign for everything.
Did you do any other sort of training, any rifle training or anything like that?
No, nothing.
And who did you share a tent with? Was it still the same person? Or had you'd gone up
No, it
to
was Jack Sutherland and Vin Duffy, who was another one. He's no relation to me.
and you're all dispatch riders?
No,
No.
it was only two.
Only two dispatch riders
Yeah.
for the whole battalion?
Ron Househall and myself.
For the whole battalion?
Yeah.
That would have been quite interesting.
Yeah.
Do you remember getting letters from home
Oh, yes. Yeah.
and what did you do in your spare time at night?
Well, there's not much you could do because there was no light. We never even had a hurricane lamp.
Tell me about your tent and how you lived.
Well, it was just the ordinary tent. When we first went out to the airfield, we had no mosquito nets. We used to get eaten alive with mosquitoes and flies, millions of them. And hard rations, because actually when they sent our equipment, they put what we wanted first right down the bottom of the hole. So we had to wait to unload the ship before we got any tents and mosquito nets or anything like that.
You would have slept on the ground.
Yeah, on the ground.
What was the feeling like amongst the other troops at the time?
Yeah. What have I done to deserve this?
After you'd been there 6 weeks or so, do you remember the first bombing raids by the Japanese?
Yes, I did. I saw the first bomb drop on the airfield.
Describe that to us.
Well, there were 7 planes that come over at midday, it was. Generally, they used to bomb us at night, full moon. And, we had nothing to hit them back with. There was no anti-aircraft gun could fire high enough to hit them.
How did you feel about it?
We just got a belting.
Were you surprised?
No, I don't think we were. I think we were all too young to realise what was going on there.
Did you get to accept these bombing raids as just part of your daily life?
Yes, I suppose we did, really. At first they didn't do very much damage at all. Really, there was nothing there to hit. And they just make holes in the ground. Because later on they used to, well, every full moon we had, they'd be over. And once again, we never even had searchlights.
Do you remember when the McDewey was bombed?
Yes, that was in June. But we never had any fighter aircraft for a long time. And the day they eventually did come in, they come in hedge hopping. And we thought they were Zeros.
That would have been the Kitty Hawks.
Yes, the Kitty Hawks, that's right. There was Louis Truscott went up, it was a recce plane come over, all on his own, and Louis Truscott went up and shot it down. And that lifted the morale up over the hill. And then it was on. Then the Japs used to come over nearly every morning, perhaps 3 or 4 times, strafing on the airfield. Then later on we got searchlights and large rack. One night they come over, and it was the first time I'd ever seen them come down low. They were about 13,000 feet, and they really blew them out the sky.
Do you remember any mischief that the boys got into?
No, I can't recall any mischief they got into. Yeah.
And do you ever remember having any sort of entertainment?
Not at Moresby, no. No, there was nothing, really.
How did you get paid?
Well, we were restricted with our pay because there wasn't all that money up there, and we had a drastic shortage of silver and matches. I don't know why, but they wouldn't let the fire go out because no one could light it there.
So were you moved around at all after the 7 Mile?
Well, yes, we moved to the other side of the airfield. And, we had a few air raids there and so forth, but one time they come out and they pattern bombed us. And I was caught out in the road. And I had to jump off the motorbike and lay in the gutter.
But you made it.
I made it, yeah.
Were you a bit shook up?
I wasn't pleased about it.
Early July, the troops were starting to prepare to head up into the mountains.
Yes.
Did you know that you'd be heading up?
Oh yes, it was going to be an exercise. It was B Company was the first to go, and the thing I remember a lot of them have forgotten about is the whole of B Company was sitting on their backside with their feet up in the air, the shoes off, the doctor going along inspecting their feet.
Before they went?
Before they went. See that they could walk the distance.
So B Company set off, and were you told that you'd be following them later on, or?
Well, originally the rest of the battalion were going to go round to Buna in these little small ships. But when the Japs landed, that was called off. And it was within days the rest of the battalion company at the time went, because the Nips had already landed and were heading for Kokoda.
So were you told to get ready, that you'd be heading off?
Oh yes, yeah.
Do you remember setting off up the track?
Oh yes, yeah.
What was it like?
Oh, it was all right at the beginning. It got worse as we went up. Yeah. We thought we're never going to get there.
How would you describe the track?
Oh, rugged. Rugged.
And do you remember it being wet or dry?
Never missed, every night. Rain.
So you would have walked up and met the troops that were already there at Kokoda?
Yes, yes. Well, they'd been pushed back. They'd already captured the airfield, pushed the Japanese back, but the Japanese kept bringing up reinforcements. Far more than we had.
So at this time, what was your job?
Well, I used to go out with the linesmen, repairing the lines, putting the phones on the different companies and that.
Did they have a line along the track going back to Moresby?
No, not that I know of. There used to be radio.
Or was the radio just going from company to company?
No, it was phone.
It was a phone. It was like a phone line.
Yes.
From company.
Headquarters, yeah.
Yeah. And how did you find that, doing that job?
You have to be careful.
Did you carry a rifle by this stage?
Yes.
And how did you learn to shoot it?
the hard one. No, there was not much in knowing how to shoot it, really.
Well, you would have only been 18 at the time. Do you remember who your lieutenant was?
Yeah, Gervais.
Was he a good officer?
Yes, he was, yes.
And how many were there in the signals?
30.
At times, did you get caught up in the action?
No, not really. I never ever saw a live Japanese. Saw dead ones, but they were very well hidden and camouflaged. They knew what they were about.
What was the feeling like amongst the troops at that time?
Yeah, back to the very beginning. What have I done to deserve this? Yeah.
What was your supplies like for food?
Very bad. They had to fly it up to us.
Do you remember them getting dropped in, the supplies?
Oh, yes, yes, yes.
And did you have natives with you at the time?
Oh, yes, yeah.
What sort of job did they do?
They were porters, really.
They carried in your ammunition and
yes, that's right. And
food.
carried the wounded out.
They did a great job.
Oh, marvellous. Yeah, marvellous.
So after Kokoda, you were pushed back to Isharava. Do you remember that?
Oh, vaguely, yes. Because we're on the move all the time, practically.
And do you remember getting out of Isharava and being pushed back over the mountains?
Yes, yes, yes.
And the trip back to Manari. Did you ever get sick on the track?
No, I never got sick or anything.
You would have got back to Manari. Do you remember Colonel Honor there making a speech at Manari?
Yes, yeah, yes.
Were you in that?
No, I wasn't in that.
You weren't in that group of men?
No.
You would have probably been sent back to Moresby?
Yes.
Did you end up in the hospital there?
No.
What happened after coming back off the track?
We were at the camp at Koitaki they told us we're going to have a rest for 3 weeks, but it turned out to be 3 days. And then we moved to Humblong Bluff. We're a reserve battalion. But however, they were pushing the Japanese back, and they sent us on to Pyramid Point, where we spent a couple of months there, I think.
And that was somewhere near the 7 Mile.
Yes, a branch off. Yeah.
And you were still in the headquarter company?
Yes.
And still writing messages?
Yes.
Messages? So this probably brings us up to about December.
Yeah, that's right. About December.
Yes. And then what happened to you? Where did you go?
Oh, we went to over to Gona. We're all any plane that could fly. We went across it. I went across in a bomber, and they landed at a place called Popondata. And we marched from there to Soputa. We stayed there overnight, then went on to Gona.
And what was that like?
Another mess.
Were you still sending signals?
No,
Setting
I
up
would.
phone lines?
Yes, well, yes. A runner and whatever was available at the time. Yeah.
The job as a runner would have been pretty.
Yes, that was going to different companies.
What was Gona like? Was it flat? Or was it
swamp.
hilly? Swamp.
Yeah.
And there would have been a bit of action there. At
Oh,
the time.
yes. We had a few killed there, as a matter of fact.
Were you still in the same platoon? Did you still have the same lieutenant?
Yes, yeah.
So what happened to you there at Gona?
I got malaria and dysentery. And I was sent back.
You also had a friend there that was sick.
Oh, yes, that was Les Ryan, yes.
What happened to Les?
He got scrub typhus. He died, it was either Christmas Day or Boxing Day.
And so were you flown back out of Popondetta back to Moresby?
Yes.
And there, where did you go?
The 2nd 9th AGH.
And you would have spent some time there?
Yes. Spent probably a good 6 weeks, I suppose, in hospital.
What happened after that?
They boarded me and made me B class and sent me back to Australia.
Oh, that would have been a blessing.
Oh, yeah, wonderful.
You'd have been very happy to be coming home.
My word.
And you came back to Melbourne?
Yes, on leave, yes.
And spent some couple of months in Melbourne?
No, just a period of leave. Then went back to Sydney. Then on to Newcastle.
And you were still in the 39th?
No, the 39th had been disbanded by then.
How did you feel when you heard the news they'd been disbanded?
I just wondered why. Because they could have reinforced it. But being militia, I think, they disbanded it.
So you went to Newcastle, and what were you in then? What battalion were you in then?
I was in the 114th General Transport.
And what was your job?
I was driving the truck.
Where, around the Newcastle area?
Around Newcastle area. Yeah.
With troops or supplies or?
Bits of everything. Yeah. General Transport. Yeah.
So how long were you up there?
Probably about 8 months, I suppose, and then they sent me down to Sydney. And I was driving around Sydney there till the war finished there.
So you were in Sydney when you heard that the war was over?
The war was over, yes.
Yeah. How did you feel about that?
Oh, marvellous, yeah.
Do you remember any mischief that some of the boys got into?
Yes, well, when the ship come in with the beer, Blamey didn't want it to come ashore. And the captain of the ship wouldn't take it back. And he left port with all this beer on the wharf, and they pushed it off the wharf into the sea. And the Navy was watching them. So the next day they sent a diver down and recovered it. They kept it for themselves.
The Navy kept the beer for themselves.
For themselves, yes.
So the
They wouldn't share.
They wouldn't share. What was the feeling amongst the troops towards Blamey?
He wasn't liked.
You were at a parade in Moresby and Blamey was there?
Yes, that's right.
What did he say to the troops?
He recognised that the 39th had done a wonderful job, and what was left over from the 39th, they were put in the 36th Battalion. And Blamey told them that 39th, we expect a lot out of you. You've had experienced troops, and you're going back into action again.
And then what happened?
A few minutes after that, we heard this bang, and someone called out, someone shot himself. We later heard he shot himself through the foot. But at the time, I didn't know who it was.
And I'm just going to go back to when you were back in Sydney. After you're in the 36th Battalion at this time, and were you sent overseas again?
Yeah, we were sent back to New Guinea again.
And how did you feel about that, being sent back again?
Oh, we weren't very pleased about it.
What ship did you go on? Do you remember?
The Duntroon.
And what happened the second time when you went back to Moresby? Had it changed much?
Well, actually, we were sent to Soputa, on the other side of the island, and were mainly unloading the ships at Buna.
By this time, the Japanese would have been
Oh, they were pushed back.
back.
Dang, I think at the time, yeah.
So you're unloading supplies.
Yeah.
And then what happened after that? Where did you go?
Well, they brought in the leave then. If you had so much leave in your book, you could apply for it and they send you home, which I did. And then went back again.
And that was it?
That was it, yes. That's when I went into the transport company.
So you were in the transport company?
At Newcastle. There.
At Newcastle. Yeah. And you would have heard that the war was coming to an end?
Yes.
Would that have been?
Yes, it was. We were winning.
Were you discharged from the army in Newcastle, or did you come back
from
to Melbourne?
They transferred me down to the 120th transport at Fisherman's Bend, and I was discharged from there.
And how did you feel when news came through that the war was over?
Ah, yes, it was a wonderful feeling. Yeah.
Were you still single, or had you been married during this time?
No, I was married this time. Yeah.
Did you get married during the war?
Yes.
When you came home on your first leave or your second leave?
On my second leave, hey.
Had you met your wife? And were you engaged before you went away?
No.
And what did you do after the war?
I used to work with my father, actually, who was a landscaper. And I went back to work with him again.
That would have been a nice job.
Yes.
And how long were you a landscape gardener?
Well, I've never really given it up.
You're a very lucky man.
Yeah.
What do you think is important for the younger kids of today to remember about what happened in the islands in the Pacific, in particular New Guinea? What's important for the young ones of today to remember?
Yes, well, be lucky it never happened to them. Yes. There's no discipline today.
Well, on behalf of the 39th Battalion History Subcommittee, we would like to thank you very much for your time and this very interesting interview. Thank you.